I can still hear it clear as day, the nasty crunch of glass smashing to bits. It was just after dawn, and I barely poured myself a steaming mug of coffee, standing by my living room window to soak in the soft pink sunrise bouncing off my shiny new solar panels. Out of nowhere, these sharp little pops cut through the quiet, followed by a heavy thud, like something big slammed into metal. My gut did a flip. I slammed my coffee down so fast it sloshed all over the floor, but I didn't care. I was already bolting for the door. Hang on though. Let me back up and give you the full scoop. I'm Jack Preston, just your average retired guy living in this sleepy little neighborhood for about a year now. I spent 30 years busting my hump as an electrical engineer, and when I finally hung up my work boots, I couldn't resist the charm of this place. Crisp air, tree-lined streets, and that cozy, neighborly vibe hanging around every white picket fence. I sank a big chunk of my savings into a house with a nice, sprawling yard, chasing a dream I'd had forever, going off the grid, energy-wise. That dream finally sparked to life last week when I got a slick set of solar panels bolted up. But that morning? Man, the peace and quiet I loved was about to get smashed, literally. I hauled this out the side door and froze. Two of my brand new panels were busted to hell, the glass cracked up like a windshield after a rogue rock. Shards of those black photovoltaic cells sparkled in the grass under the early light. And there, looming over the wreckage, was Karen Whitman, the neighborhood's self-crowned HOA queen. She gripped a collapsible baton, the kind cops carry, like she was some backyard enforcer. "Karen," I yelled, my voice cracking with shock. "What in God's name are you doing?" She whipped around, snapping the baton shut with a flick of her wrist, rocking sweatpants and a ratty old tee. Her smug grin hit me like a punch. She looked way too pleased with herself. Karen's got the short, brassy blonde hair that's all frosted up, and her thin lips are always pulled down like she's never once cracked a smile. "It's Miss Whitman," she snapped, stepping closer with a sneer that could curdle milk. "You can't have these ugly panels where everyone can see in from the street. They're trashing our historical aesthetics class." I fired back, steaming. "They're not even facing the road, and last I checked, this ain't no historic district." We'd already tangled over this 2 days back when she'd stormed up to my porch, waving her fat HOA rulebook like a battle flag. I'd laid it out for her nice and calm. My city permit was locked in, and the HOA couldn't touch municipal renewable energy rules. She'd huffed off, muttering about fines, but I never figured she'd go full psycho and start smashing my stuff. She pursed her lips tighter. "This neighborhood's kept its classic vibe for decades, and I'm not letting some newbie retiree take our property values, not while I'm around." My stomach knotted abhorred. I'm no shrimp, 6 feet tall, still pretty solid from years hauling heavy gear, but that baton in her hand, paired with the crazy glint in her eye, had me rattled. "Put that damn thing away and get off my lawn," I barked. To my shock, she actually listened, slipping it into a little pouch on her hip. But those eyes of hers stayed locked on me, dripping with hate. "You can't shake me that easy," she said. "This is HOA turf, and I am the HOA. Take down those eyesore panels, or I'll do it myself again." She stomped on a broken piece like she was squashing a roach, adding, and trust me, you don't want to see the fines I can pile on. You'll wish you'd never moved here." My blood was boiling, climbing to a point where I could have lost it, but some little voice in my head told me to keep a lid on it. Here's the kicker, though Karen had no clue who she was messing with. I'm not just some random schmuck with a house. A few months back, I'd quietly scooped up the power contracts that keep this whole neighborhood lit, a slick little move from my old engineering days. Let me break it down for you. I spent my career tinkering with electrical grids for cities and private projects. When I landed here, I sniffed out that our little co-op supplying the juice was bleeding cash. So, I snagged a controlling share on the cheap, figuring I could turn it around. Kept it hush-hush, though. No point in spooking the neighbors with the fact I basically own their electricity. Karen didn't know squat about that. As she stood there, throwing threats like confetti, I had to bite my tongue to keep from spilling the beans. But man, the mess she'd made? 2 panels trashed, thousands of bucks in gear pounded to dust. I could taste the bitterness rising up. That warm, fuzzy feeling I'd had about this place? Gone in a flash. I dropped to my knees by the wreckage, heart thumping like a drum. Karen just turned and strutted off toward the sidewalk. Call as you please. We'll see how you like the violation notice. She tossed over her shoulder, leaving me with the disaster. What she didn't get was that I held way more cards than she thought. Real, live electrical power. As I picked up the pieces of my busted dream, a plan started brewing in my head. She could flex all she wanted, but she needed me a hell of a lot more than I needed her. If this was her game, I was ready to play hardball. Karen had no idea she just kicked a hornet's nest, and trust me, she was gonna feel the sting big time. A couple days later, I'm sitting in the HOA's cramped little office, across from Dennis Carver, the property manager. He's behind this flimsy laminate desk, cheeks all pink like he's embarrassed to be there, reading off some paper. Sorry, Jack, but the HOA guidelines say you've got to stick to the neighborhood's established exterior look. I'm keeping my cool, barely. If he saw the irony, lecturing a guy who spent decades on energy systems about design, he didn't let on. I only showed up to this meeting out of politeness, but man, was I starting to regret it. After Karen pulled her little smash and dash, I called up the local cops, figuring they'd jump on it. Boy, was I wrong. The officer who showed, a stocky guy with broad shoulders, pretty much shrugged it off, saying they'd slap her with a weak vandalism warning and call it a day. Unless you've got her on video swinging that baton, he said, it's your word against hers, and that's a tough climb. So there I was, stuck at this lame mediation table, listening to Dennis drone on with the same HOA garbage Karen had shoved down my throat. Only now, they were piling on fines, stuff like unapproved alterations, non-compliant structures, and my personal favorite, visual disruption. Disruption? That word burned me up. Karen smashed my panels to smithereens. I cut in, interrupting Dennis's monotone ramble. You gonna do jack about that? He dropped the paper, looking flustered. Where? Still looking into it, he mumbled. Ms. Wickman says she just removed a section that broke the bylaws. Claims she only tapped him lightly 'cause they looked loose and dangerous. I almost choked on my own spit. Loose? Dangerous? She was hammering away like she was cracking open a piñata at a kid's party. Dennis blinked at me, sweat beading on his balding forehead. Guy was a classic middle manager type, more at home with Excel than a face-off. Look, he said, the HOA's official line is you skip the approval process and stuck those panels where folks can see him from the road. I kept my cool, barely. They're in my backyard, Dennis. You'd need binoculars from the sidewalk to spot him, and the city greenlit the whole setup. He just gave me this helpless shrug. Rules say any change outside your house needs a thumbs up first. Sorry, man, but skipping that comes with a hefty price, fines, maybe even a lien if you don't play ball. My jaw locked up tight. It was like the HOA had every official in their pocket, petty tyrants running the show. I'd heard the neighborhood whispers, folks getting slammed with thousands in fines for painting their house's shade too wild. Or that sweet old widow who couldn't get a wheelchair ramp, 'cause it didn't match the architectural vibe. I crossed my arms, letting out a slow sigh. And if I take this to the city? Dennis shot me a quick, pitying glance. You can try, but the HOA's got wide reach. The city usually stays out unless it's a clear energy law breach, and they might see your panels as a gray area, especially if we say you dodged our process. I was dying to drop the bomb about my stake in the power co-op, but something told me to hold that ace up my sleeve. Instead, I cut the meeting short. Fine, I snapped. Mail me your stupid notice. My lawyer's gonna love this. I stood, gave him a sharp nod, and stormed out. Outside, the late morning sun glinted off rows of cookie-cutter houses, all decked out in the same dull off-white. The silence of those perfect lawns felt like it was choking me. Karen cared more about her precious curb appeal than basic decency or the law. I stomped to my truck, fist balled out, and then I spotted her. There she was, perched in her goofy golf cart by the entrance, yakking at an older couple who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Her eyes flicked my way, then slid off like I was dirt under her shoe. Part of me wanted to march over and demand she say sorry, but nah, I had a juicier plan cooking. I drove home, dialed my insurance guy, and kicked off a vandalism claim. Maybe I'd claw back some cash for those busted panels. Then I dug into my stash of co-op papers, the real game changer. Here's the deal. This neighborhood's power comes through a sweet little contract I'd bought majority shares in. It locks in cheap rates from way back when, an absolute steal for everyone here. But there's this clause. If the HOA were a big chunk of homeowners mess with local energy projects, like, say, smashing solar panels, I can renegotiate or even ditch the deal. Those panels of mine? They count as energy infrastructure, even if they're just in my yard. If the HOA's out there banning or breaking M, they're screwing themselves right into a contract violation. I could drag M to court and win. Now, I'm not one to hold grudges, but I've got a soft spot for justice. Karen went full on thug, and the HOA is pretending it's no big deal. They want to play dirty with their petty fines? I'm ready to hit back with some real muscle, legal and financial. First, I called up a private investigator to poke around Karen's past. She didn't strike me as the type who'd never stepped out of line. Nobody goes straight to smashing stuff unless they've got a history of throwing their weight around. I wanted dirt, something to level the field. Then I hit up my buddy Monica, a contract lawyer with a killer instinct. I slid the co-op agreement across her desk, and she let out a low whistle. "Jack, this thing's a fortress," she said, grinning. "If you can prove the HOA trashed your renewable setup and then came after you for it, you could flip their whole world upside down, pun intended." That was music to my ears. For the first time since this mess started, I felt a wave of calm roll over me. Over the next few days, I braced myself as the HOA's notices piled up in my mailbox. Daily fines for visual disturbance, extra penalties for not clearing the damaged materials. Even threats to slap a lien on my place if I didn't cave by month's end. I had to laugh at the nerve of it. Karen thought she had me cornered, some helpless old retirees she could bully. What she didn't know was she'd picked a fight with the guy who quietly owned the grid keeping her lights on. She was about to get a shock, figuratively and maybe even literally. Next up, it was all about building my case, stacking the proof high and tight. After Karen's rampage, I wasn't taking any chances. I slapped some sneaky security cameras around my place, angled just right to catch anyone sniffing around the new solar panels I'd ordered. Yep, I was doubling down. Those replacements were going up with beefy mounting brackets that'd take a blowtorch or a wrecking ball to bust. If Karen tried anything this time, I'd have her on tape. No excuses. While that was cooking, my private investigator dropped a bombshell. Turns out Karen used to lord it over a fancy neighborhood 20 miles south of here. Property records showed she got booted after picking fights with everyone, racking of fines she couldn't dodge. Same old song. She'd claw her way to HOA queen, nitpick folks' lives to death, then turn vicious when anyone pushed back. Eventually, they'd team up, tick her out, and she'd slink off to her next victim, us. A serial HOA bully, plain and simple. With that juicy intel in my pocket, I felt like I was holding a loaded deck. The second those new panels went up, I fired off a formal notice to the HOA, nice and official, letting them know the city had already signed off on M. Right on cue, Karen shot it down, yammering about historical continuity like a broken record. Her rejection letter hit my mailbox, but I was ready to flip the script. My lawyer whipped up a cease and desist notice, slamming the HOA for breaching the power co-op's contract by messing with my solar setup. They laid it out clear. Stop harassing me and my panels, or face the music, legal and otherwise. I strolled into the HOA office and plopped it on Dennis Carver's desk myself. Per guy went white as a sheet. "Jack, what's this?" "You're gonna cut our power," he stammered. I kept my cool. "Not threatening a thing, Dennis. But the contract's crystal clear. If you keep trashing renewable energy gear, the co-op can ditch the deal." That means your sweet locked-in rates? Pills. You're looking at market prices, triple, maybe quadruple what you pay now, or no juice at all, till we hash out something new. His eyes bugged out, pure panic. You can't pull that off, can you? I just nodded. On the majority shares, so yeah, I can, if you force my hand. I'd rather not, but Karen's got me backed into a corner. He started flipping through the pages, muttering under his breath as the legalese sank in. Sweat popped up on his forehead like tiny warning lights. I'll call an emergency board meeting, he mumbled, and I left him to stew. That night, I crashed hard, best sleep I'd had in weeks. Then, bam, midnight hits, and my phone buzzes. A neighbor texting, power's out. You good? I rolled out of bed, groggy. My house was fine, battery backup purring like a champ, so I hadn't clocked any outage. A quick peek online showed no utility glitches. But when I checked my security feed, I caught a shadow creeping near my panels. I bolted outside, braced for the worst, but they were intact. The footage showed some blurry figure messing with the wiring before hightailing it. Good thing I locked it down with an anti-tamper box. They just tugged a cable and bailed. Standing there in the moonlight, it hit me. My place was humming on solar juice while the neighborhood sat dark. Someone, Karen, maybe, might have been gunning to frame me for a blackout. I wasn't waiting around. Next morning, I told my lawyer to fast-track the contract termination notice. 1 week grace period for the HOA to shape up. By afternoon, a buddy on the board clued me in. Their emergency meeting had blown up. Folks were livid, especially the old-timers on fixed budgets. Triple power bills or no electricity. That's nightmare fuel. They were begging for a deal, anything to dodge the fallout. Karen, though, stubborn as a mule. Called me a bully, swore I was bluffing. But with my co-op contract making the rounds, her grip was slipping fast. Day 7 rolled around, and I'm at my desk, finger hovering over the button to kill the deal and dim the neighborhood's lights. Phone rings, Dennis, sounding like he's about to cry. Jack, the born voted. He wheezed. We're dropping the ban, scrapping the fines, and covering your damages. Just don't pull the plug, please. I leaned back, eyeing my new panel soaking up the sun outside. Justice was finally peeking over the horizon. Karen's on board with this? I asked. He let out a shaky breath. She got outvoted. They swamped her out for Diane Carter as president. She's stepping down, but she's muttering about lawsuits or some nonsense. The board's ready to meet your terms. You'll keep our rates. Satisfaction washed over me like a cold beer on a hot day. Yeah, but here's the deal. Karen's gotta apologize in person and pay for my busted panels out of her own pocket. Plus, the HOA's rewriting the bylaws. Solar setups that pass city muster get a green light. No one else should deal with this crap. He went quiet, then mumbled, I'll pitch it to M. Can you hold off doing anything wild till we sort it? I gave him a straight answer. 48 hours. Then it's lights out. He thanked me like I'd just saved his dog and hung up. Later that day, my lawyer confirmed the HOA was caving. But that evening, an email popped up, supposedly from Karen. No apology, just a snarky jab. I'll make sure you regret moving here. Classic. My get twisted with a flash of rage. Karen wasn't backing off, even after eating dirt. She flat out refused to sign the new bylaw or cough up a dime for my smashed panels. How many folks had she steamrolled into submission over the years? How many neighbors forked over cash for fines they didn't know, just to avoid her wrath? I sat there, staring at my phone, thumb hovering over the button that'd tell the co-op to choke the neighborhood's power or kill it dead. The board was ready to talk, but Karen? She was digging in her heels. If she kept whispering in their ears from the shadows, she could tank their final vote. A little voice nagged at me. Pull this trigger, and you'll be the bad guy. I shoved it down. Sometimes you've got to flex real muscle to tame someone who only bows to strength. I brewed a cup of tea, watched the sun sink below the trees, and gave the HOA till morning to grow a spine. If they didn't, I was ready to flip the switch both ways. Dawn broke with that sharp, cool bite that says summer's finally letting go. I checked my inbox, hoping for a sign the HOA had come to their senses. Nada, just spam about car warranties. No sorry from Karen. No word on the bylaw fix. I dialed Dennis Carver straight to voicemail. My get started churning, so I made up my mind. If they were gonna play ostrich, I'd yank their heads out of the sand. I hopped in my truck and rolled over to the co-op's distribution hub, a squat little building on the town's edge where the neighborhood's juice flows through. Flashed my shareholder creds to the guard, gave him a nod, and stepped inside. Text buzzed around, tweaking dials and eyeballing meters. I found a quiet office with a big console screen mapping out the area's power use. Frankie, the co-op manager, a grizzled old dog with a lopsided grin, ambled over. So, he said, tapping the display showing the neighborhood's load, we yanking the cord today? I froze for a sec, staring at those lines, thousands of kilowatt hours ticking away. AC's keeping folks cool, fridges humming, lights chasing off the dark, maybe even machines helping someone breathe. Those people didn't smash my panels. Most hadn't cheered for Karen's solar ban. They were just regular Joes, too scared or slammed to take her on. But maybe a power pinch would light a fire under him to finally face the bully. Let's go partial, I told Frankie. No full blackout, not yet. Trim the supplies so lights flicker, ACs limp along, just enough to wake him up. Drop it 10% every hour. He nodded, punching in the commands. Gun it. My chest thumped as I gave the green light. Guilt tugged at me, sure, but I'd exhausted every polite option. The HOA ignored me, and Karen wouldn't budge an inch. About half an hour later, my phone buzzed an unknown number. I picked up, catching panicked chatter in the background. Mr. Preston? A breathless woman asked. Speaking. It's Diane Carter, interim HOA press. I'm at the office. People are freaking out. Power's blinking. Appliances are dying. Is this? Yo. I'll let the silence sit for a beat. Diane, I gave you all a fair shot to settle this nice. Last I heard, Karen's still dodging responsibility for what she broke. I warned you what's coming. She tripped over her words. Karen's holed up in her house, threatening to sue us if we kick her off anything. She's dialing up the county, trying to pin you for extortion or some garbage. The board voted to meet your terms, but she won't sign the papers, says it's all fake. Outside the co-op window, the sun blazed on the horizon. Well, Diane, you've got two roads. Sidestep Karen's tantrum, or watch your power fade till it's gone. 3 hours, till it's critical, then it's lights out. She begged, can't we fix this without hurting everyone? Families don't deserve this. I almost caved, her plea hit hard. But then I pictured Karen's smug face, that baton cracking my panels, the HOA's relentless fines. Sometimes, I said, a neighborhood's gotta face down a bully. If your rules can't do it, maybe this will. She went quiet, faint crying echoing behind her. Neighbors, probably. Okay, she said, voice hardening. We'll handle it. Just give us a shot. I gave him those 3 hours, no more. The console beeped hourly as Frankie dialed back the juice another notch. 2 hours in, my phone was a war zone, voicemails, texts, social media lighting up with pics of dim bulbs, dead TVs, folks fanning themselves on porches in the heat. I felt like a jerk, but deep down, I knew Karen was the real villain here. Then, a text from Diane. Karen's done. Resigned from everything. Agreements attached, reimbursement included. Restore power. Please. I'd opened the PDF. There it was, the board's official word, signed by every member still standing. It greenlit my panels, promised cash for the damage, opened the door for solar under new rules, and booted Karen from any role for her vandalism and bullying. Even tossed in a note about her owing me an apology, carefully worded. Not there. I let out a long, slow breath. They pulled it off, I muttered. Turned to Frankie. Crank it back out. Full speed. And keep an eye out, Karen might try something dumb. Frankie punched in the commands, and just like that, the console lit up, showing the power surging back to full blast. I could almost picture it, lights flaring bright, ACs kicking on, folks breathing easy again as I shoved my phone in my pocket and hit the road. Cruising home, I swung by the clubhouse. A little crowd was milling around, mostly older folks, faces a mix of relief and pure ticked-off vibes. Karen's doing, no doubt. Pulling into my driveway, I spotted a golf cart parked on her lawn. A sloppy sign slapped on it, $500 OBO. Her windows were pitch black, and those fancy hydrangeas she loved, drooping like they'd given up. She'd been knocked off her throne, and it showed. Over the next few weeks, the neighborhood rolled with the punches better than I'd figured. The new solar-friendly rules stuck, and a couple of folks even hit me up for tips on picking out their own panels. Sure, that power squeeze I pulled left some people jittery, but plenty got why I'd done it. A few even pulled me aside, whispering thanks for doing what they'd never had the guts to, standing up to Karen. As for her, she holed up in that dark house for a bit, licking her wounds, then slapped a for sale sign out front. Word around the block was she slipped out one night, U-Haul packed to the brim. No big to buy, no showdown, just a quiet exit for a woman who've lost her chokehold on us all. Justice came with a price tag, and yeah, I felt a twinge of regret for the folks caught in the dark during my standoff. But deep down, I knew it was the only way to get through to a bully like her. The second she realized I held the real switch, her whole game fell apart. Now, I kick back on my porch every morning, coffee in hand, eyeballing those shiny solar panels soaking up the sun. The yard's calm, birds are chirping their heads off, and there's no baton-swinging nutcase lurking around anymore. The HOA's even tossing around the idea of turning some unused common space into a community solar farm, clean energy for everybody. That's real headway, messy as the road to get here was. Sometimes you've got to be the guy who trips the breaker on the way things have always been. It ain't clean or cozy, but when someone's used to running the show and checked, they never see the bigger switch coming. Karen found that out the tough way. As the sun climbs, juicing up my house through those panels, I can't help but grin at the steady hum of power that's mine. No HOA nonsense to muck it up. I'm no Caped Crusader, just a neighbor who happened to be the right kind of stubborn to take on the wrong kind of loudmouth. And if Karen ever pops up somewhere else, swinging the baton at a fresh batch of unsuspecting folks, I hope there's another me out there. Some guy ready to yank the pluck. 'Cause every bully like her eventually runs into the one fuse they can't snuff out. So, that was me.